This is the incredible story of how one guy walked away with $1.7 billion and fooled everyone. In September 2019, the Wall Street Journal published an article that was titled, WeWork's Adam Neumann cashed out $1.7 billion before the fall. The piece recounted the unbelievable story of how one man, Adam Neumann, managed to pull off one of the greatest cons in modern history. It's a tale of greed, deception, and corporate malfeasance, and it all centers around a single question. How did Adam Neumann manage to walk away with so much money? Before we get started, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss any new stories. The story begins with a man named Adam Neumann arriving at San Jose Airport with a battered black briefcase in tow. He stepped off the plane looking haggard and disheveled. His clothes were rumpled and his hair was a mess, but there was something about his demeanor that suggested he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. That day, September 2019, was not just another ordinary day for Neumann. It was the day his empire was crumbling down around him. He had just come from New York City, where he had been trying to save his company, WeWork, from financial ruin. As he sat down to open his laptop, Neumann found himself staring at an email that contained the cold, hard numbers. His company's valuation had dropped from $47 billion to $8 billion, a staggering 83% drop in just 2 years. He knew that this meant only one thing: WeWork was on the brink of collapse. To make matters worse, Neumann learned that 2,400 employees had just received layoff notices. They were being let go as part of a cost-cutting measure to try to keep the company afloat. This was a sad state of affairs for a company that had once been valued so highly. Neumann's mind raced as he tried to figure out what to do next. He had put everything into WeWork, and now the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. To make things worse, he had recently cashed out a massive $1.7 billion worth of stock, leaving him with a mountain of cash just as the company was collapsing. It seemed like Neumann had known the end was near, and he had saved himself while leaving everyone else holding the bag. But there was more to the story than met the eye. Neumann hadn't set out to defraud anyone. In fact, he had started the company with the best of intentions. He wanted to change the way people worked by providing a more flexible and affordable alternative to traditional office space. His vision was to create a global community of entrepreneurs and innovators who could connect with each other and collaborate in a more meaningful way. Neumann's charisma was infectious, and he soon found himself attracting some of the brightest minds in the industry. Together they set out to build something special. They held events, hired top talent, and developed a product that was unlike anything the world had ever seen before. It was a shared work environment where people could rent office space on a monthly basis and even share desks with other like-minded individuals. The idea was revolutionary and it quickly caught on. Soon, WeWork was expanding rapidly and opening locations all over the country. Neumann was hailed as a visionary and his company was valued in the tens of billions of dollars. But behind the scenes, things were not what they seemed. The company was losing millions of dollars every month and its future was uncertain. Despite the financial struggles, Neumann continued to raise money from investors. He was able to do this by painting a picture of a future where WeWork would become a household name and generate massive profits. Unfortunately, this was nothing but a pipe dream. As the company's financial situation grew more dire, Neumann became increasingly desperate. He began selling off his shares in the company at every opportunity, even though he had assured investors that he had no plans to do so. By the time the company collapsed, Neumann had managed to cash out a total of $1.7 billion worth of stock. It seemed like he had known the end was near and had saved himself while leaving everyone else to fend for themselves. But this wasn't the case. You see, Neumann had never intended to defraud anyone. In fact, he had started the company with the best of intentions. The problem was that he was a terrible businessman and had no idea how to run a company. He had convinced himself that his vision was more important than the company's financial stability, and had made a series of disastrous decisions that led to its downfall. For example, Neumann had expanded the company too quickly and had taken on too much debt. He had also made a series of bad investments that had left the company high and dry. Ultimately, WeWork collapsed because of Neumann's mismanagement and he was left with nothing but the $1.7 billion he had managed to cash out before the company went under. But here's the thing, Neumann hadn't intended to fool anyone. In fact, he had genuinely believed that his vision was going to change the world. He had just been so focused on his goal that he had failed to pay attention to the warning signs. He had ignored the financial red flags and had pressed on regardless. And when the company eventually collapsed, he had been left scrambling to save himself. Looking back, it's easy to see that Newman had made a series of mistakes that ultimately led to the company's demise. But at the time, he had been so confident that his vision was going to succeed that he had been willing to take risks that most sane business people wouldn't even consider. It is a cautionary tale of how even the most charismatic and well-intentioned entrepreneurs can still end up causing massive damage. Newman's story is a reminder that success is not always as straightforward as it seems, and that sometimes even the most brilliant ideas can fail if they're not executed properly. So what can we learn from Newman's story? Well, for starters, it's important to remember that charisma and good intentions aren't enough to guarantee success. You need to be smart and savvy to succeed in business. Secondly, it is important to be aware of the warning signs and not ignore red flags just because you're excited about an opportunity. Finally, it's important to remember that success is not always as straightforward as it seems, and that sometimes even the best laid plans can go awry. Newman's story is a cautionary tale, but it's also a reminder that even the most successful people are human, and that they can make mistakes, just like the rest of us. You might be wondering what happened to Newman after WeWork collapsed. Well, he took some time off to lick his wounds, and then he got to work rebuilding his life. He started a new company called Flow, and he began investing in various startups. He also gave talks at conferences and events, and he wrote a book about his experiences. These days, Newman is doing well for himself. He's still a billionaire and he's still a prominent figure in the tech industry, but he's a much humbler person than he used to be. He's learned from his mistakes and he's determined to make sure they never repeat themselves. Now, WeWork is a completely different story. The company was eventually able to turn itself around, and it's now a profitable business, but it's a shadow of its former self. The company has been through a lot of changes and it'll never be the same again. If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe. With that said, thank you very much for watching.